So now let's take a look at our andesitic and rhyolitic debris. Remember, we can group these two together because they have a much higher silica and oxygen count. So they are much more felsic. Now because they are much more felsic, this means they have a much higher viscosity. So that high viscosity means, remember, that this lava is really sluggish. So it's going to take a lot of pressure. Right? So in our volcanoes, right, if here I have my magma, it's going to take a lot more pressure, right, to push this material out because it is so slow and sluggish. So with these kind of eruptions, we're going to see them as very explosive. So we're going to see much more particles. Remember, we don't really get too much of a lava flow here. Instead, we're going to get this material kind of blasting out. So let's look at some of the debris that you learned about in the previous slide. The first one is called pumice. You may have seen pumice before, right? It's very commonly used to kind of rub off some of the the tough spots that you might have on your elbows or calluses that you might have on your feet. That's pumice. And pumice forms as the froth that sits on the lava. So this lava is getting churned up so much that it's going to create a froth on top, kind of like the froth that sits on your coffee. And if that froth solidifies, it forms pumice. Now what pumice actually is it's a glass. And that's why it works so well to scrub off your calluses. Now the next one you learned about was ash. So really both our andesitic and our rhyolitic volcanoes produce ash. Our basalt volcanoes don't really produce ash. But what's really interesting that you have to note here is that when ash comes out of a volcano, it's not like ash on a cigarette. This is actually tiny shards of glass. All right, if you looked at that previous picture in the last slide, right, you saw that ash under microscope, and that was all little tiny shards of glass. And this is why you can't breathe it in. Right? If you breathe it in, it will surely wreck your lungs. Right? It will actually completely destroy them and cut them up. Now, the other ones you learned about were pumice lapilli and accretion lapilli. This is just clumps of ash, right, that kind of form as it comes down from the sky. So the important thing to note here is that you really only get these glasses forming, right, with our andesitic and our rhyolitic volcanoes. So it's very different, okay, from the basalt lava flows that we talked about a few moments ago.